If you use trend lines in your Forex trading, just understand, if you do nothing but flip a coin instead and just go long or short based on what it tells you to do, the outcome will probably be the same. And it's a lot easier to do. I'm serious. I felt like the material was getting pretty heavy as far as where we're at right now, as far as all of you who have consumed the material up until now. So I figured it was a good time to do another Dirty Dozen video. Now, the Dirty Dozen, for those of you finding this channel for the first time, is a video that I did a while back. It's one of my more popular videos. And it showed you 12 of the top Forex tools that almost everybody out there is going to tell you to use. There's almost nobody out there that tells you not to use them. And that's really, really strange because they are all garbage tools. They're outdated, they underperform, and there are so many other options that nobody's talking about. And because they're not, most of you don't even know they exist. But so many people over time have just gone gaga for these awful tools that it's going to be a pretty tough sell to get you off of them before you end up discovering other things later. And it's going to take a lot of doing. So in this video, I'm going to talk about why you, if you fall into this category, and why so many people like to use trend lines. Now, there's a reason for this. I'm also going to tell you why they are terrible options to use. Because they are, and they are based on things that are not real. Also, how they're just like flipping coins. I said it at the beginning, and I meant it. And I'm going to show you why I make that correlation. And then there's one argument that I know a lot of you people who currently use trend lines are going to make. I already know what it is, or I got a pretty good idea of what it's going to be, and we'll tackle that too towards the end. So as far as why people like them, it all goes back to when you first learned how to trade and what the people on Forex Twitter and Forex websites continue to do over and over again. They're very good at charming you into think tools like this work great because there's a way you can pretty much convince anybody that any tool works phenomenally. But it started out when you first learned. You saw something like this. You're like, wow, I never saw this before. Chart reading was always very difficult to me before I learned. But if I just use a line to connect 1 or 2 or 3 or more points on a chart, I can then predict if price is going to break out of that trend line or bounce off of it. This is awesome. I don't have to worry about news or studying up on currencies. I can just put this line on a chart and watch it go. Now, this is something that is extremely easy, and because of that, and because they always do a great job of showing you things like this, where it works every single time, we think, well, that's all we got to do. I like that. That takes almost no effort at all. So that's what I'm going to use in my trading. And then this little snake charming dance continues because then you seek out other people who use trend lines. And what they do is they do a great job of picking off, like this is a stock chart, for example, but the perfect stock on the perfect time frame to actually support their argument. And then the trend lines they draw aren't even super accurate. But it's close enough. And you just want to believe because you have bought into this trend line theory now. And you are all in on this idea. But what you don't realize is that these people who have these websites and these Forex Twitter handles really have to scour their charts to find examples that work this well. Because for the most part they don't. Because at its core, they have no real predictive value. And then what makes matters worse is they like to do this little trick right here. They like to say, hey, what's going to happen? Is it going to bounce or is it going to break through? They don't actually put themselves out there and make a prediction. But you can bet whatever price ends up doing, they will show you in another tweet or in another blog post and say, see, look, because of this trend line, price reversed or price broke out. Now, this doesn't help you at all. You wanted to know this information beforehand. But by being sneaky and doing it this way, these people who run these websites and these Twitter handles win every time. They can't lose. Because in the end, the trend line had nothing to do with it. Those of you who know me know that I live in Vegas and I come from the sports betting world. And trends are a part of the sports betting world as well. People love to point out trends because they're really cool and they try to offer some predictive value, but in the end, a lot of them fall flat. There are some professional bettors that use them, but they use them very, very sparingly because for the most part, once you discover a trend, almost in anything, there's a pretty good chance it's about to end. But due to randomness, you never know quite when that moment is going to be. So it really doesn't help you at all. But man, do people think it does, because most people aren't that bright and they're easily fooled. This is why you have seen things like this pop up in casinos everywhere around the world for the last 20 years. This is a board they put on roulette wheels. And what it does, it shows you, I don't know, the last 10, 15 numbers that have popped up on the roulette wheel. And so you see, like, these will be numbers that are red, these will be numbers that are black. And what it does is it makes you think that a certain number is about to come up because it is either due to come up or it is just part of the trend that is currently happening. So let's say, you see all these black numbers pop up. After this 29, what do you think the next one's going to be? Well, some of you might think it's red because a red hasn't come up in a while, or you might just think the black numbers are on a roll and that's the next one to come up. And this is, casinos don't do anything, guys, that lose them money. They only put things in that make them more money. And this is one of those things. They play on your dumbness to think that randomness is not actually randomness. And I don't think there's been any actually studies run on this. I doubt you could actually do that. But I bet you this little thing right here has made casinos millions over the years, just for that one reason. Because far more often than not, what you are looking at is not a trend. All right? A trend, just really by definition, is a general direction in which things are going. You don't need a trend line to tell you if a chart is in an uptrend or a downtrend. You can just look at a chart. But when it comes to actual trend lines, what you are actually looking at is a statistical anomaly, which is just something out of the ordinary, a little bit peculiar, not easily classified, a deviation from what is normally going on any random chart, on any time frame, anywhere. For every place where you can draw a trend line, I can show you 50 places where you cannot. In every single one of those charts, there is probably a trend happening somewhere. When it comes to trend lines, what you are looking at is an anomaly, an area that just happened to make these highs or these lows that you can actually connect with a straight line. And that is all it is. No predictive value. You could accomplish the same thing just by taking where price is right now and flipping a coin. Now, I want to reiterate this for those of you who do use trend lines and do look at other people who also use them. They always get you because you never know if it's going to break out or bounce, and they don't either, but they always look like they do. So first off, if you're going to be a trend line trader, pick one. Either be a breakout trader or a reversal trader. What do you ultimately want that trend line to show you? Because if you don't, and the people you follow don't either, you are going to get played because they do the same thing every time. They'll point out a line, but they won't commit to whether they think it's going to bounce off it or break through it. And then what happens is price will do one of two things. It's got to go up or it's got to go down. And they will wait till later to show you the result. They'll say, see, watch how price bounced off of this trend line. Or see, watch how price finally broke this trend line. It's a win-win for them because they always look smart. But it's often a lose-lose for you because it doesn't help you any. But so many of you trendline traders out there fall for this little trick every time. Now, trend lines aren't even a 50-50 proposition, really, because there's actually three possibilities that could happen when you're trading them. They could either break out past the trend line and start a new trend. They can bounce off of the trend line and continue whatever trend they're on. Or, and this may not always affect you depending on where you put your stop loss, but every once in a while it's going to. You have those false breakouts and those false reversals that actually look like they're going to do one of these two things, but in the end don't. And this tilts it away from a 50-50 proposition. And you end up with the exact same percentage as you would if you flipped a coin. If you take any currency chart on any time frame and say, I'm going to flip this coin and say heads I go long, tails I go short, you will accomplish the same probability. Because in the end, you're not really looking at an actual trend. You're looking at a statistical anomaly. Because in the end, trend lines have nothing to do with whether price moves up or down. Those of you who have been on this channel before know who does. It's the big banks. This is the most popular video and the most impactful video that I have ever done. If you have not seen it, whether you agree with me or not right now, please go watch it. It will change the way you think about how Forex is traded. It has already been an eye-opener for hundreds of thousands of people. In an absolute tiny nutshell, what happens is the big banks and institutions find out where the majority of retail traders are going on any currency. And all they have to do to make money themselves is take price the opposite way. Now, the main purpose of that video, what I try to convey to everybody, was that your best bet is to stay away from the places the big banks trade the most. Where do the big banks trade the most? Where the majority of traders trade the most. So think of it this way. Support and resistance lines were part of that Dirty Dozen video. I don't like them. I don't think they are good ideas. And the biggest reason, I'll go ahead and give out the main reason of why I feel that way, is because the big banks play there the most, because traders play there the most. That of any Forex tool out there, the majority certainly use support and resistance lines in some way. The horizontal version, because those are exact places where a lot of trading activity occurs, and banks love that. Do you really think the banks pay any attention to diagonal support and resistance? Think about this. It's ridiculous. I can tell you right now they don't for sure, because even if they wanted to, there's no standard for even drawing a trend line correctly. There's people out there who say this is how, but they're not the authority on this. And because of that, all of these little rebound and or breakout points that your trend line has, it can be completely different from the other trend line trader trading right next to you. Support and resistance lines have very defined areas where people are trading. Trend lines do not. I mean, how do you draw your trend line? Do you connect the highs and the lows? How many points does it take before you actually draw one? Do you just connect any 2 points on a chart? Do you wait till you get 3 or 4? Everybody's different. Do you just connect the bodies? Do you ignore the highs and the lows because you think that's noise? Do you really concern yourself with the opens and the closes, and you draw your trend lines that way? Some people do. A combination. Maybe it's just whatever is convenient for your narrative, whatever gives you the trade that comes the soonest. Do you connect the highs and lows and the bodies? Do you disregard some of these things? If any of this is confusing you, I'm going to show you examples in a minute. But then at what point is a trend line no longer legit? After price has completely disrespected your trend line and gone 100 pips the other way on a breakout, do you still keep it on your chart? Do you erase it? Whatever your answer is, not everybody feels that way. And so what ends up happening is you have this enormous inconsistency with where everybody's entry and exit points are on a particular trend line. So for you or anybody to sit there and say, this is where support and resistance is on this inaccurate diagonal trend line is ridiculous. At least the support and resistance line crowd have some consistency behind their madness. The trend line crowd doesn't even have that. So let's take a look. I mean, these things are all over the place. This is the example I just gave before. So this top one is actually decent. It hit that, hit that, hit that. That's 3. This is yet to be seen. So that's, I guess, a proper trend line, if you want to count it that. But look at this horrible one down here. False breakout, false breakout, false breakout, false breakout. Hit, hit, hit. Didn't quite hit it. Didn't quite hit it. This one's all over the place. There is no consistency or accuracy to this thing at all. And traders, understand, these are created by people who actually run websites and Twitter handles. It doesn't come down to accuracy. It just comes down to what is convenient for them to show you. And you'll fall for it almost every time. Look at this nightmare. So I don't know what they're even trying to connect, whether it's the lows or the bodies. It's just some arbitrary line. I don't know what the fuck this is. Look at that. What is that even supposed to be? Why did it start there? It's that you just go to Google Images and you can see these everywhere. Just go there and type in trend lines. You will see example after example. But what it proves is there is zero consistency across the board. When it really comes down to it, all these trend lines are is whatever you want to believe they are, whatever fits your own trading narrative. And whatever that is, that's fine, but just know there is no consistency at all, and in the end, you're just flipping coins. You will never convince me that the place where you drew your trend line is a legitimate point to where we can predict if price is going to go up or down. You just can't do it. So if you can find a way to get away from this, do whatever it takes to take these out of your trading and move on to something better, because there are so many better tools out there. Now, about that, I know there are some of you throughout this entire video that are getting all pouty-faced and saying, hey, it's not just about using trend lines by themselves. I combine trend lines with things like the RSI or stochastics or Fibonacci, whatever the case is. It's very convenient of you to ignore this. Well, I'm not ignoring this. I'm addressing it right now. So for those of you making this argument, just follow me on this, all right? Maybe try this instead. Instead of combining two completely garbage tools, if you combine any combination of things, it's going to be better than just using one thing by itself, all right? We already know that. But instead of combining two or more things that I featured in the Dirty Dozen video, and I have already made about 3 or 4 individual videos on every single one of those tools, they're all getting their own, but I'm breaking every single one of these down over time. But instead of using those garbage tools and combining them, step outside of that little bubble that you were told to sit in and stay in and never leave. Step outside of that just one time and find and test some of the thousands of other options that are out there. I have tested thousands, more than 1,000, probably more than 2,000 at this point. Trust me, they're out there. If I can find them, you can find them. And what you're going to discover over time is that if you search hard enough and you test enough, you are going to find some tools that work pretty darn well. And then when you find one, you save it. And then you go out and you find a couple more. And then you combine those tools. Let me tell you what happens when you actually start combining numerous things that actually work well. You actually end up with a system that has a much higher than average chance of predicting whether price is going to go up or down. Because yes, there is randomness out there, but there is also real momentum. And there are tools out there that, because of the mathematics within those tools, are very good at doing a better than average job of predicting if that momentum is, 1, real, and 2, which way is most likely to take price. And once you combine them and test them, dear trader, you're going to be amazed at what you find. Now tell me this, is there any other channel out there talking about trend lines the way I am? Probably not. They're all telling you to use them and how and why. There's almost nobody out there who's actually exposing them for what they really are. How many other channels are out there telling you and showing you there's a whole new world out there with thousands of other tools? Many of them work a lot better, showing you how to best find them so your search doesn't take forever, and then showing you how to best combine them so you can start winning consistently. None, except for this one. If you can find it within you to break your old habits that clearly aren't working, let's be honest, and try something new. Try something that has already reversed the fortunes of hundreds of traders across the world in a very short amount of time. To just try it and see what happens for free, because it's all free. This is the channel for you. Watch that Big Banks video. Watch that Dirty Dozen video. I'm going to link both of those below. I'm going to put both of them on the end screen. And then subscribe to this channel and hit the bell and don't miss anything. I am not here to make fun of you and the way you trade. You simply were never told different. It's not your fault. But it's about time that you took the time to learn a much better and much smarter way. Because guess what? It's out there, and you're watching it right now. So let's go get it.